My name is Christopher, and I use he, him, and ze, them pronouns.
And my name is Judah. Ooh, I'm kind of loud.
There we go.
There we go, we figured it out. And my pronouns are they, them.
And welcome to the second episode of OutWrite Newsmagazine's kind of brand new, because now we're on episode 2,
yeah.
podcast, Speak Out. It's Trans Awareness Week. Applause to the trans community. Congratulations. You're in the best group. So this episode will be all about the aforementioned trans community. But first, before we get started, we want to say a few words about the current situation going on with workers' rights at the UC system right now.
So, for the past week, UAW and SRU the unions that are made up of our grad students, postdoc workers, and other academic workers have been on strike at every UC campus across California in protest for a livable wage, among other benefits related to childcare and transportation. I myself have been going to the pickets all week in solidarity with our lovely academic workers, and I've been kind of keeping up what's going on. President Drake of the UC system has started retaliation against our workers, including the docking of their pay.
So, as the editor-in-chief of this lovely organization and Judah as the developmental editor, I would like to speak for OutWrite Newsmag and say that we stand in full solidarity with the strikers and urge the University of California system to meet their demands. Our TAs, our researchers are truly crucial to the UC system functioning as it does, and it's absolutely devastating that so many can't afford to live in the communities that they're vital to. We'll be releasing a longer statement in solidarity with them probably next week, depending on how the strike goes, and an article about the strike written by Judah is coming out probably next week as well. But we wanted to get that out of the way and let everyone know that queers who are anti-union, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
Support the strike. If you can help it, don't go to class. If you're forced to go to work, we get it. Don't feel bad, but donate to the strike fund. Support your TAs. Ask how you can help. Don't be a scab.
Yes.
Don't choose those little jobs that look so tempting, because they're going to abuse you as well and kick you off as soon as they, try to get the TAs to do their jobs again. But TAs are not backing down until they get what they want, and all the power to them. But before we get into the main transgender show that we're having today, we want to tell you a little bit about ourselves as members of the trans/non-cis community. So Judah, you go ahead and go first.
Yeah, so again, I'm Judah, pronouns they, them. I am I am non-binary. If you've seen me on campus, my aesthetics change a lot. I like to describe it as I go from femme goddess to cottagecore goblin, depending on my mood. And I've also written about that a lot too, that my presentation changes depending on how I'm feeling. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Yeah, right now they're gender neutral, a little bright Super Smash Bros. Player is how I feel the vibe is.
Thank you.
Pokemon shirt on.
Oh my god, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I think this is also one of the only few outfits that I have that have trans pride colors on them.
Ooh, perfect. For anyone watching online, I guess I'll introduce myself. Hi, Christopher. I'm a genderqueer trans man. I also vibe with the term gender boy because gender isn't real. And I use he, him, and ze, them pronouns. So I already tell a bit of a freak. I came out 5 years ago. My trans anniversary was this August.
Ooh, nice.
And I've never been happier.
Congrats.
And we'll get into our minutia of the trans experience in some of the commentary that we'll be getting into. But as you can see, I never shut up about it. I'm wearing my You Are Valid trans sweater from Meg E. Myco Art. Check them out. They're an awesome non-binary Asian artist. And I bought this sweater after I got rejected from the design media arts major at UCLA because I needed validation. I also have my cool trans phone case. it's, as Fox News feared, it is my whole personality. And I think I make it work. So, yeah, that's a bit about me. And for the main event, we asked for the community to send in questions, stories, anything about transness, and we're here to provide some advice, some commentary, etc., from two perspectives that have had experience navigating the world as trans and non-binary young adults. So Judah, go ahead and read our first submission.
Alrighty, so our first submission comes from Alder, who uses he, they, she pronouns. I messed up the order. He, she, they. There you go. I apologize to you, Alder. I swear I will get it right.
This is taking over. I promise.
I'll get it eventually. No, I do. No, it's just sometimes. I mean, it also depends on how you use pronouns too, right? Everyone, it's interchangeable, and some people are like, oh, I want you to use. I prefer this one, then this one, then this one. Oh, it's arbitrary. Everything's different. But anyways, I still apologize. So back to the submission. So Alder says, so much of the negativity attached to queerness is about or attached to shame. What has queerness taught you about shame in and outside of being queer? I think for myself, I have greatly reduced the amount of shame and embarrassment I feel surrounding just about anything I do, and that queerness has taught me pride and shamelessness about the things that do not need to be shameful, especially where I am the only one shaming myself because of societal expectations I was mentally trying to meet. It's a great breath of fresh air to not care about what other people think about you and your tastes, and to understand that those around you who are completely off-put by what you love maybe aren't the people for you. That's a really good one.
Yes, a lot of the shame that I initially felt as a trans person when I was like freshly 16 binary PM in an area where I knew about transness, but the only other trans guy at school already had his screening scheduled. I was like, if I don't strive to medically transition, or I don't strive to look as cis as possible, that I'm somehow failing the trans community. And I also felt shame around my parents, which I know now love me unconditionally, which I'm very privileged and lucky to have. Shout out to my mom and dad. A lot of it is self-imposed. Like I was talking about this with you before the show, but like a lot of transness, and this isn't like if you just think hard enough, all of your problems will go away. No, of course not. But a lot of internalized transphobia and shame comes from ourselves or the expectations we think others have of us. That beautiful thing at the end about people who feel that way about you are not the ones that matter. And you'll find people who affirm whatever experience you have.
I completely agree with that. I think there's so much pressure for us to look a certain way that we must, if you're AFAB, right, you must hate your body.
We'll get into that.
There's that you have to hate your body, you have to hate. But then I think too that so many trans people focus on the dysphoria of it all. Not to say that their dysphoria isn't valid, because it is, right? It's rough out here. Some people do genuinely struggle with it. But also I feel like we should start talking about gender euphoria as a marker of transness. We don't talk about that enough. I feel awesome when people refer to me as they, them. I feel amazing when they use they, them pronouns for me. I'm indifferent on other pronouns, I don't care, but they, them is the top. Despite, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we gotta stop measuring transness based on how much we hate the gender we were assigned at birth, and more on how much the gender that you chosen or the one that you experience brings you joy. Because in the end, you can transition all you want, you can get all the surgeries, and you can change your name, and you can go stealth, all that. But in the end, if you don't find any joy, if you're just trying to remove pain, in the end, you're just going to find another thing to be dysphoric about.
Exactly.
It ruins your life. It really does. And of course, it's not always although we mentioned a lot of it is self-imposed, it's not all our fault. Like, that shame comes from somewhere for a reason. There's a lot of, speaking from a transmasculine perspective, although I don't use that term specifically, it's, if society only treats you well because you pass completely 100% as a man, and same, I assume, and even more so because of the violence that they face for trans feminine people, like, then of course you're going to be insecure and dysphoric about things that you feel are gendered the incorrect way. Like, there are TikToks where those little things, it confuses trans people and autistic people alike. But it's like feeling like it's about the feminine eyes, or I saw a video of voice training, like how to make your O's more masculine, and I was just like, guys, please, like, this is so, like, gender has never been more fake in that we're policing the way that we say certain vowels because we think that it makes us look more like a woman.
Exactly. It's so a lot of it is pretty arbitrary, like my voice. I don't like my voice. I think it sounds way too feminine. I've tried to masculinize it. It doesn't work. It's unfortunate. It's hard. And also I also feel like too, like, to put that pressure on yourself to be like, you have to be masculine, you have to be this, you have to be feminine. Like, I also feel like that contributes to a lot of people's dysphoria.
It's a lot of, like, self-belittling.
Exactly.
If you don't get to that point, it's your fault that you're
Exactly. And I follow trans people on Twitter, and there is a lot of discussion about how you should look after you've been on T or E. And a lot of it is so, like, yeah, the milestones, but a lot of it is so, if a lot of the way that beauty standards for just cis people are so Eurocentric that I genuinely do not think if you're, like, a person of color, you're a trans person of color, you will never be in those standards, unfortunately, just because those standards are racist, right? Like, I'm never going to be considered, at least in the eyes of, like, general society, like, I don't think I'll ever be considered, like, good looking. That's fine. I'm not here to... Thank you.
I wrote a whole article about that, about being perceived as ugly in society. It doesn't mean you hate yourself.
No, it's just, like, that's just the truth of it, But I also think, too, that also doesn't... I feel like, for me, like, when I see posts like that, and I'm like, oh, I don't look like that, like, it makes you feel bad, and you're just like, I don't want to feel this way. Why are you, like, they don't do it on purpose, you know what I mean? Like, they're doing it because they're venting genuinely about, feeling dysphoric. But then it's also, like, too, like, I've had this conversation with, my roommate who's also non-binary. We've had this conversation before because we had an ex-roommate who would constantly compare themselves to different people, and would always, like, call themselves fat, that they're never gonna look like a woman, and that was all fine and dandy, except it, like, triggered their body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Like, and me too. I was like, I'm like, why?
Yeah, okay.
So I feel like it's like dysphoria is such, like, a double-edged sword, and trying to combat it and venting about it is also, like, a double-edged sword, because on one hand, yeah, your dysphoria is very valid. On the other hand, too, it's like, well, some of us don't look that way anyway. Like, some of us don't look at all like that.
And, like, even if you aren't that gender, you're like, hey, I'm like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think that, like, I don't know, we should be focusing on, like, the positives of what we can control. Presentation, a lot of the times, is something we can control. Cut your hair, wear whatever clothes you want. I think that, like, oh my god, when I cut my hair, gender euphoria.
You wrote a whole article.
I wrote a whole article about it. So I think that, like,
I drew the article.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was like it looks so good. It was a great article. One of my favorites, I think. But yeah, I think like we focus so much on dysphoria that I feel like it just brings out the other negatives in people's lives, and it's like, can we focus? Yeah, exactly. Can we focus on the positives?
And again, not in a toxic mental health way, in a way where we've been on that side and we know that it does not help.
Yes, exactly,
And
exactly.
of course, you're not going to be happy overnight, and you may need a therapist, you may need a friend who's been through it. Like, but we're telling you, 100%, like guaranteed, forcing yourself to find the joy in those things. Every time you have a dysphoric thought, and of course it's not going to be every time, but aim to once a day, one thing that you really like about yourself or that you appreciate it happen.
Yes.
Because you're trans. Like, I found a really nice friend. Somebody on the internet used my pronouns. You know, my mom used gender neutral language. All this stuff. Find one
Exactly.
and hold on to that, because we know, even with presentation, like if you're a teenager and you're not in an accepting household, it's not easy to just change your presentation in a safe way.
Exactly. I also feel like it puts a lot of pressure on younger trans folks to immediately transition. And obviously, like as we talked about last week, that that's not possible in some places now. And also, even if it is possible, it's like going on testosterone or on estrogen, getting like your surgeries, like those are big decisions. Like those are not like, yeah, like those are not huge. And I don't want to like be like I don't want to sound like a TERF. I'm coming from this of like, I'm coming from a place of like love, because I do feel like so many of us are pressured to do stuff that we might not be happy with, because that's what everyone else has done. You know, everyone else in the community has done it, so we should do it too.
Yeah, that was my persistence when I came out.
No, that was mine too. That was mine too.
I need to immediately get on to, and it was funny because I mean, we live in California, and my pediatrician was like, okay, sure. I was like, oh, really? I can see an endocrinologist? And of course, my mom was like, whoa, give us a second. Like, it's been, I was only out for like a couple weeks, but I had only known for so long. And it was like, September, and I had known for that summer, and it's like what I was operating off of as like a dumb 16-year-old. And of course, if you're a 16-year-old and you want to go on TV or get top surgery, yeah, like, this is of course just my experience. But I was like, I learned that testosterone is a steroid that raises your blood pressure, and I'm disabled specifically related to my heart, and I've been taking blood pressure like suppressant medication since I was like 1.5. So that's not an option, and I had to. It's interesting when you're like in a situation that literally forces you to not have that as an option anymore. It's honestly easier to let go of, because like it is an option to you, and it's something that you can fight for safely. It's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to do that because that's the default, and it's easier for it to be the default.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I first came out, I started my journey a lot later than most people. But I also, like, when I was first joining like other trans groups, it was always like there was always a pressure there to kind of like physically transition, and I had to like kind of really like ask myself if it was something that I wanted, because people would be like, oh yeah, you can just go to the doctor and go get a prescription, and I was like, okay, but give me a second to think on this, because I don't know if I actually want to do this.
That guy that I mentioned, he was like, do you want to know the name of my hysterectomy doctor? And I'm like, I didn't ask, but I took it because I was like, okay.
I mean, I do want a hysterectomy. I do for,
so hard for anyone to get a
yeah, I was like, it's so hard anyway to get a hysterectomy that it's like kind of like wishful thinking at this point. It's actually like there's actually 2 surgeries that you can get. There's a bilateral salpingectomy and a hysterectomy, which I think both kind of have their like positives depending on like what you need. The salpingectomy just takes out the tubes, so like there's nothing connecting your ovaries to it's just floating. And then the hysterectomy just kind of takes they take your whole entire uterus out.
I think a lot of, conservatives misunderstand the pressure from the trans
Yes.
as like, you must be transgender and we're gonna groom you, quote unquote, into being trans. Well, what we mean by pressure is like, because all of those other trans people feel that same shame and internalized
Yes.
transphobia, it's a cycle, right? So
Yes.
they experienced it and they don't know enough at that point to break out of it. Like, as I said, it's been 5 years for me. So much shit has been learned. Like, I'm a senior in college now. I was a junior when I came out of high school, which is like considered late, which is crazy to me, but like, whatever. And it's just like, I've learned so much about myself and about the community and what brings me joy and what I want and how I feel about my body. And like, being stuck in a situation where the only trans representation you have is somebody who, and the only person who's like feels happy or feels safe is someone who's like 100% stealth all the surgeries. Like, yeah, of course you're gonna feel pressure, and it's not their fault, but it's also like, I mean, it's not their fault. It's the same thing that put you in that position to feel pressured by that person.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's go to this is such a good, I love this. I'm so glad we got some, thank you to everyone who submitted. I posted it on my personal, my art account, and I was like, transes, come through for me, and they came through, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who submitted. Oh my god.
That form will stay open. We'll
Yes, please submit more.
But yeah, our next submission comes from Oliver, who uses they and he pronouns. So hello, I'm a 15-year-old. Hello, 15-year-old. Oh my god, I'm like 6 years older than you. And I think I'm trans. Since 2020, I've been questioning my gender. I've identified as trans FTM, that's female to male or trans male, demi-boy, gender fluid, etc. Currently, I identify as non-binary/trans masculine. The problem is, I don't have the trans history that you see everywhere. I wasn't a tomboy who hated pink and was friends with the boys. I don't feel crushing dysphoria all the time. That brings me a lot of, that's insurance, but I think they mean like not feeling very good. Because that's how I should feel, right? I should be disgusted by my own body. I should feel like I'm dying every second I spend in a body that isn't mine. I've had moments of dysphoria. I've cried myself to sleep because I don't look like a boy. I didn't buy an outfit I liked because it would show my feminine body. And I felt like I was going to die because I hated myself so much. But I don't feel this way anymore, not most of the time. I know I should feel happy, but I just wish I felt bad again. Even though I was miserable all the time, at least I was sure of myself. It kind of validated me in a way. It was, okay, you didn't have this universal trans experience that every trans person had, but at least you treat yourself like normal transgender people. My question is, do I need to suffer to be trans?
Oh.
Let's say it. No.
No.
No, you do not.
No, you don't.
I'm so sorry that you're 15 and this is the shit that you're going through.
No.
Sucks.
And I mean, I share a lot of experiences with Oliver. Like I said, my journey started a lot later in life. I didn't start thinking about gender until I was at least 17, going on 18. That was like my senior year in high school. And, you know, I didn't have those like traditional experiences where it was like, oh, I only like doing quote unquote boy things, or like, oh, I was like pretty I still am pretty girly in quotations. I don't know if there's another way to say that without invoking gendered language, so I apologize. But yes, I was very like quote unquote girly, and you know, I thought, and I do have thoughts like this too sometimes, where I'm like, wouldn't it be easier if I just said I was cis, or I let people think that I was cis? And it is easier in some regard, but also it's like, I don't feel cis. Like, if you don't feel that way, if you don't feel cis at all, then you probably aren't cis. Like, yeah, maybe you're trying to tell yourself something, but you also don't need to hate yourself. Like, I'm not medically transitioning. I don't plan on medically transitioning, because I like my body the way that it is. So one thing that I wish I could change is my voice, low-key. But low-key, I really wish it was lower. It's actually like pretty light. I don't like listening to myself on recordings because I'm like, ugh. But anyways, no, for real, like, I can't. But, you know, like, I don't bind most of the time. I do, like, the illusion where I put, like, multiple, like, loose shirts on, so that way my form isn't as, like, tight as it should be. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I say fuck it and show off a little bit of midriff as a treat. As a little treat. A little trans treat. No, for real. Because sometimes I'm like, I should... Like, if you feel good about your body, then you feel good about your body. You don't need to feel bad about it to be trans or to be non-binary or to be... Like, literally anything. Like, you could just be you. And that's fine. Like, I think we talked about this again earlier, like, there's so much pressure to change who you are. And you don't have to be trans. You know, I've been going through my own, like, journey a little bit more. I've been discovering things that I like, that I don't like. And I realized that there was not a lot of things that I needed to change. Even just changing your pronouns. Like, as simple as pronouns is so much. It does so much. Like, I didn't need to medically transition to feel gender euphoria in regards to my pronouns. So, like, I think if you feel okay, you shouldn't feel bad about that. You shouldn't feel bad at all.
And if you're on any trans medical circles,
leave them, yes. Trans meds
certainly are trans people who make it their thing to hate themselves because they feel the same way that you do.
Exactly.
That is a requirement.
Exactly.
Real transgender is to hate yourself.
Exactly. And, like, also leave those circles, too, because more often than not, they're also, like, part of TERF circles. Like, they're, like, it's the same rhetoric, like, yeah, the Venn diagram is a circle. But yeah, no, like, you know, you don't need to feel like you should change your body. If you're happy with your body, you're happy with your body. That's awesome.
And wear that damn shirt. Go back to the thrift store or wherever you saw it, and I challenge you to get it. Even if you don't wear it right away. I challenge you to get one thing that makes you feel non-traditional in that way, feminine or whatever type of thing you wanna show off about yourself. One type
Exactly.
thing, and eventually you'll feel, and of course, you know, doing that, experimenting with that, seeing how the people around you react, it's gonna be tough because you're not always gonna be with people who are gonna support that 100%. But like trying to find that little network of people, even if it's trans people online.
Exactly.
Like, that is so important because, you know, jumping off of what you just said, I don't bind. I'm very fortunate to have tiny boobs. It's actually funny because I mentioned before, I'm disabled. I have a chronic illness called Marfan syndrome. And the body type, the Marfanoid body type, is very thin, very tall, very long. It's actually called like arachnophilia something.
Whoa, what?
Arachnophilia, that is like long fingers and long toes. So I literally have spider fingers and toes. And I also have an pectus excavata, which means my sternum goes like this, like it's concave instead of straight.
Oh.
So my chest is literally in a little bit. Now I have a sick heart surgery scar, which adds to my aesthetic. The top scars every week. But yeah, like I don't mind. I did for the entirety of high school until April I was at a debate tournament where I'm wearing a suit, even though I didn't have top surgery or HRT. Coolest I ever felt was wearing a Banana Republic suit to debate tournaments with all these fucking cis men, and then beating the shit out of them in the debate rounds. And I was just like, I'd had lung collapses before that made binding difficult, and that's one of the reasons I don't bind anymore now is because my lung capacity is like 75% what it's supposed to be. But I just turned to my debate partner, we were like in our hotel room, and I was like, Andrew, can you see my tits? And he goes, no. And then I'm like, okay. and then I never binded again. I needed validation from one person that meant a shit ton to me.
Also,
and that started that acceptance of the body that I have. My boobs, however small, however big anyone sees them as, I have a man's chest because I am a man, and
there you go.
that's it. Like I made a piece about it recently where like that's just someone messaged me and was like, I have never seen someone with my body before who just has the Marfan body type and breasts and is trans and can post, this artwork of themselves that just shows that they are okay with it. And like having those role models and those friends is so important in
Exactly.
taking that step to truly make yourself feel happy.
Exactly. Also, Oliver, you're 15. You're 15. Your journey is not gonna, hopefully, is not gonna end here. You have a whole life ahead of you to experiment. And endless. And hopefully, if your family is supportive, if you have friends that are supportive, you will have more chances to experiment. So, like, don't feel pressured to have it all figured out. I think there is a pressure on us to, like, when we come out, to have it all figured out, and that's not the case for a lot of people. Because, there's obviously a lot of decisions. Are you going to medically transition? Are you not? Are you just going to socially transition? What are your new pronouns? What is your new name? Like, it's a lot. So take your time. That's
all. You said 2020. It hasn't been 2 years. Like, that 2 years of your life when you're 15. What is that? Like a tenth of your life?
Yeah.
Like, of course, it's gonna feel like forever. High school feels like forever, which is why trans kids suffer so greatly when their like resources are taken away from them by the fucking government and their families and their school boards, because high school feels like forever. And like,
it does.
now in my life, I'm like, it's week 9, and I thought it was week 6 like yesterday because life is already going so much faster.
Yep.
And like, yeah, I just have to say, truly, the answer to your question, do you need to suffer to be trans, is no. I don't care if you were a girly kid, if you love Barbies, if you painted your nails, if you still paint your nails, if you want to wear a dress, if you don't want to cut your hair, change your name, whatever, you are just as deserving of the label of being trans as the most passing transitioned guy in the universe that you would never in a million years guess is a part of the trans community.
Exactly.
You are 100% just as valid, and even if you don't feel that, I know in my heart there is at least one person, and I would say two with Judah, that knows 100% that you are worthy of being in the trans community, and it doesn't matter whatever your circumstances are, if that brings you joy and you have gotten to a place where you no longer feel that dysphoria, that's fantastic. That's so wonderful. Like, there's obviously all this discourse about dysphoria, non-dysphoric trans people, all this stuff. What's the point of transitioning if you're not gonna like yourself afterwards?
Exactly.
What's the point? Like, you're not gonna hate your body forever, and it seems like you're already on that road, which is amazing. And like, that's gonna ebb and flow. Some days you're gonna feel it, some days you're not. Years later, you might feel, hey, maybe I'm gonna try something different because this doesn't feel right anymore, and that's okay.
Exactly.
I'll come out. I don't experience dysphoria really ever because I'm lucky enough to pass in a lot of ways. And even if people call me she, her, or like write my name with a K because they assume I'm a woman, like, it's just, to me, like, because I have that support group, my family supports me very luckily, as I said. Got a trans roommate who's super supportive. I'm in OutWrite. I'm in a historical queer publication surrounded by queer and trans people who care about me and validate me and use my fucking neo pronouns. Like, that's crazy. Amazing. Like, I can just say, those people are wrong. They're confused. And that's okay.
Yep. And like, yeah. Chris summed it up. That's, yeah.
Keep going. Please keep going.
Yes.
If your name and your pronouns ever change, Oliver, let us know. We'll validate you on air. You're great. So yeah, you want to read the next submission?
Next is from, hold on, make sure that I have. the correct one. Next is from Parker, who uses he, they pronouns. Hello. I'm a young trans kid, but my gender is complicated, leading to an interesting personal journey. It is nowhere near as interesting or as horrible as others, but I wanted to share for the trans kids that haven't struggled horribly but still doubt they need to speak up. Our bad feelings are valid. It doesn't matter how small. I've personally settled on agender, but it's still complicated. I'm vaguely male-aligned, but two gendered terms still make me uncomfy, such as handsome and beautiful, but my partner, trans guy, she/they, tells me I'm handsome kind of often, and I don't know how to tell him that also doesn't sit right, despite being kind of male-aligned. But yeah, a bunch of my friends are trans as well, and I got lucky with a really good support group. My mom, not so much, though. No dad in the picture. Parentheses, yes, you can call me fatherless. No, for real. I am technically out to her, but she refuses to acknowledge it or respect name and pronouns. Every time someone uses she/her, it feels like a stab, even within my safe space. But it's been a while, about 3 years since I came out the first time, and I've changed names like 5 times, but I'm enjoying myself and making myself comfortable through, so I'm doing well, I think. Smiley face. Me, Parker. Yeah, I can't really offer any advice on unsupportive parents because it's a difficult situation, but just know that we support you, and we hope that you do find, it seems like you have a really supportive circle, so like outside your mom. Yeah.
But I'm glad. See, look, this person is able to make it through because they have that support network, even though it fucking sucks that their mom is.
As for the two gendered terms, I sometimes feel the same way. But also, I just have a conversation with my partner. I'm just like, hey. Like, one time, when we first started dating, I was using she, they interchangeably. And then I was like, he asked me, he's like, oh, how do your pronouns work? And I was like, oh, you can use them interchangeably. But then eventually I cut the she, they out. And I was like, I just want to use they, them. And like, he was very respectful about it. He uses they, them now. He does. He slips up sometimes, but that's like, it is what it is. I'm not going to harp on him about it. I mean, I've been like, yeah, he knows, yeah. And he does correct himself. So,
I do too.
yeah. It's just like sometimes you just have to check yourself. I do it sometimes too, and I have to be like, no, those are not correct. So yeah, I mean, like, you just have a conversation, just like, hey, I don't like it when you call me handsome. I think it's too gendered. Can you like find something a little bit more gender neutral? Like, oh, hey, you're good looking, or like, you're attractive, sexy, something, yeah. Don't use sexy, but find gender neutral terms for like a lot of different things. Yes, there probably is.
How to call it your boyfriend, or how to call your partner hot when they don't.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for your submission, Parker.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I will say, like, here's the thing. I'm sure you love your boyfriend individually. If they can't handle being told to compliment you differently, you need a new relationship. Just in general for anyone experiencing something.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's hard to have because it feels so awkward.
Yeah. But like sometimes those conversations are necessary,
Yeah, next time it happens, you're like, hey, I've been thinking about it, and I don't think I really like that term. Do you think you could try something else?
Yeah, and like if your partner like really like loves you, like they will be like and are supportive of you, they'll be like, okay, and then move on.
Yep.
That's it.
And maybe they'll slip up, whatever.
Like
if they know, they will.
I will say that like I do get kind of like when I had to be like, can you just use they them? I would got like really clammy and like sweaty because there is like a nervous likeness, right? Because like you don't want to like really start an argument with your partner. You're just like But he was just like, okay, and we moved on.
Yeah. Good relationships will accept those little changes and big changes.
Exactly.
You're going to be just fine. Don't worry. And I hope we can manifesting the courage for you to have that conversation next time it comes up. And yeah, so our third to last story comes from someone named May. So their question is it transphobic to not accept yourself as transgender? Short answer, no, but we'll read your story to get a little context. I discovered the term transgender at the age of 12. It definitely resonated with me. I finally had the answers to the questions I had from the experiences that made me feel alienated. I began exploring the term as well as other identities. I started identifying with all sorts of things and constantly switched to it. Eventually, I grew to believe that I won't ever find the right label because I truly felt like nothing. Nothing felt right, and I believed nothing ever will. I get tired of constantly feeling as if I needed everything figured out. Nothing feels right. Why don't I just identify as female? If I can't deal with the discomfort of the gendered society and the consequences of having to come out to finally feel free, why don't I force myself to conform? And so I did. I internalized the thought of being female, and now that is who I truly am supposed to be. No matter how much it mentally pains me to tell others that I go by she, her pronouns, no matter how much it mentally pains me to check the female box on forms, and no matter how much it pains me to walk into public women's restrooms, I do it anyway. It has been years since I started forcing myself to fit in. I don't feel any different from when I first started, and I still can't accept the fact that I'm not cisgender.
That is.
This sucks. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's.
That's why I didn't introduce them with pronouns, because I'm like, I don't want to. I feel so bad. Like.
I mean, I think there's a YouTuber, Cat Black. I think I talked about this last week, where she talks about how a lot of people have detransitioned in the wake of anti-trans laws because it's safer. And so I think there is a nerve-wrackingness of just being trans in general.
Because in a world that truly accepted you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yes, you wouldn't have to feel like you have to conform. And, you don't have to find the right label. Sometimes there's people who don't have labels. And I think there's so much pressure on us to find a label that fits. And it's like, sometimes I don't want a label. Sometimes I just want to say my pronouns are they, them, and that's it.
Sorry.
That's it. Sorry, that's what it is. I accidentally hit the mic there.
I'll say one of my probably my closest friend also has not figured out what pronouns he likes. He realized that he was non-binary or not cis earlier than I did. I think he said when he was in middle school, and he still hasn't figured it out. We're 21 years old, and the best thing, I'm trans. That's it. Like I know the pressure of wanting to feel like you're locked in this little box that's perfect. And it's perfect you size, but sometimes that just doesn't happen, and you are not alone. You are not the only person who's
exactly.
That, like you just said. And it's really hard to let that go. And I know two random trans people on the podcast aren't gonna convince you to completely change your life. But as I said with some of the others, challenge yourself to just say, I'm not cis. Maybe I'm not changing anything outwardly. I'm still doing those things that make me uncomfortable because I don't know where to go from here. But remember and consider that you do not have to change anything to know that you are cis. Even if you aren't it's not really your choice. It's not changing things. You know what I mean? Like you feel kind of stuck in that position. Like even just starting by saying, and you know what? Like you telling us this story, like you are not cis. Like even though you tell us like you're conforming, you're like, I feel the same way I did. I don't know how old you are now, but all those years ago when you were 12, when you were in middle school, that shows to us and just shows that you are not cis. No matter, even if you don't say it out loud, you know in your heart of hearts that is the case, and that's why I challenge you, say it out loud a couple times to yourself, and try to teach yourself it's safe to do so.
Exactly.
Even if you just, like I said earlier, dude, online friends are they come in clutch.
Yep.
Yeah, like sometimes you're like, even if it's your best friend, you're like, shit, I don't want to tell them, like, this is too much. But if
It's,
you know, find someone online who has a similar experience or who has been through something like that and can be like, just there to be like, hell yeah, you're affirmed, I love you.
yeah, I mean, like, I've met people in all sorts of walks of life who have affirmed who I am, and, like, I do sometimes feel that pressure to just, like, conform, but then it's like, I don't want to. I don't want to.
It's really, like, there's transness is nothing, inherently transness is nothing more than feeling that you're different in some way than what you were assigned at birth.
Yeah, if you say you're not cis, I'm not gonna question you.
Yeah.
You're not cis. Okay.
Of course. Fuck yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I met, you know, there's a trans UCLA Pride here at UCLA. It's like a closed group for trans and non-binary people, and I'm sure plenty of people in that space have your same experience. You're like, this is the only space where I can say out loud, I am not cis. But everywhere else, I am forcing myself to conform because that is how I'm pushing myself to be. And they're not villains. You are not a villain. You are not betraying the trans community. Your question originally is it transphobic to not accept you're trans? It's not your fault that you are not accepting yourself as trans. As we mentioned earlier, like, there's so many forces that, like, push you to do what you're doing, and it's so clear that you're uncomfortable with that. And, you know, even if, you know, you could tolerate it, that doesn't mean that you can't still have that label. And I'm so sorry that you're stuck, or you feel stuck in this situation. I hope something clicks someday. You meet someone, you find, you know, a friend online who really pushes you and really connects with you in that. Or, you know, you find a hobby that it fills you with enough passion that you feel you can be yourself or something like that. Even if you change your name every day, if your pronouns change every day, if you don't use pronouns, if you just use a name, if you don't use a name, you're just like, refer to me as a person, whatever. Like, there will be people, as we keep saying over and over, that will accept that. And there are actually a lot of older trans people who, like, if you look at, like, the trans survey over the years, like, a lot of people don't use pronouns. And a lot of people only go by their name or you know, mix it up or whatever, aren't binary, or are very fluid, and that's, hell yeah, that's great. And yeah, there's actually a response again from Alder that I think will be very validating for you, particularly, Meg, or whatever your name will be in the future. And he says, shout out to everyone who doesn't quite know how to identify, to those who have found flexible labels, to those who know exactly how they feel and who they are, to those who use one label now that they will drop later for another that feels more fitting. Shout out to those who aren't included in this list, to those who never find themselves included in this list. Shout out to those who know exactly what fits, to those who have been within the queer community forever, to those just finding the community, to those who haven't found themselves a part of the queer community yet. Welcome back, welcome, and we can't wait to meet you.
That's so sweet. That is really sweet.
That is so important. I love that. Perfectly written.
It's amazing. Let's move on to our last, because I think we only have time for one more.
Okay.
So let's move on.
There was a comment about intersectionality, but I think maybe we could do a whole episode.
Yeah, we can do an episode on that
For anyone who's not watching the video, I am a white man, very important part of my experience as a trans person.
And I am a brown person.
Yeah. Very complicated
yeah.
to get into the last 5 minutes. But thank you, person who asked for us to acknowledge that. That is this Trans Awareness Week. Be aware that, as they say on TikTok, not every trans person is a hairless white twig. Okay? So the universe is expanding, hopefully.
Hopefully. So the last submission is from Kelly. He uses she, her pronouns, and it's actually a really sweet story to end on because I don't want to end on such dark topics. So she writes, among lesbians, it's a common experience to have a really intense homoerotic friendship in your youth that ends in an epic, messy friend breakup. In my case, I started with an intense homoerotic friendship, but instead of it ending messily, it changed into something better. My friend came out as a trans man. He's MLM and I'm WLW, and we've been ultimate besties ever since. 13 years total. That's awesome. Over a decade. No, for real. I adore my best friend in the trans community. Y'all are the best. Heart little heart emoticon with the greater sign 3.
The best the heart emoticon.
It's like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
I don't know how to do the heart. It's like,
oh yeah, then like I think it's like a, or I guess you can do like the
oh, you can do this one too, but I like doing this one. This one's cute.
yeah, the thing.
Yeah, the finger one.
Even though I'm hypermobile, I could not.
It's like,
I'm shaking.
Kelly, we love you.
Kelly.
Thank you for sharing that. It's such a nice note to end on, you know, that there's people are a lot more accepting than what we see on the news, what we see on the internet. I think there's a lot of people who are more accepting, and there's so many identities now that kind of, you know, cross with each other that it's just like, I think the queer community overall has been very welcoming. And it's really nice to see, like, it's really nice to just see, like, a friendship just blossom, and I don't know. It's really sweet.
My first girlfriend is now like a non-binary lesbian. Hope you're doing okay, Emma. Yeah, that is so the homoerotic friendship. Yeah, too real.
Too real.
Lesbian and trans solidarity. Why else would our flags meld so well?
Honestly. Oh my god, I have a peach remote that's like the lesbian flag. It's like really nice.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you all for listening. If you didn't hear your story, as we mentioned earlier, don't worry. We will get to it in a future episode, we promise. If you'd like to submit something for us that you'd like us to talk about on air, please fill out our little Google form at tinyurl.com/submit to speak out. That's tinyurl.com/submit to speak out. You can follow OutWrite Newsmagazine on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at OutWrite Newsmag, and check out our articles on OutWriteNewsmag.org. Because of all of our new interns, we have like 3 to 4 articles a week. It's fucking sick. And that's right, spelled WRITE, because it's a pun. I love it. And remember, don't cross the picket line. And watch out for our fall 2022 print, Satanic Panic, coming out November 28th. We will not be having an episode next week because of the holiday break, but we'll be back on Friday, December 2nd. And regardless, I have been Christopher.
And I have been Judah.
And